Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 74 of Uncovering the Corners of the World podcast. I'm your host, Karina Kasmala. Using research and my personal experiences where I actually set foot in some of these places, I'll be sharing some of the unknown or hidden attractions located in the US and around the world. This week, we are leaving North Carolina and heading to the Empire State, also known as New York. Situated in the northeastern United States, New York borders Vermont, Massachusetts, Connecticut, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. It also borders Canada, Lake Ontario, and the Atlantic Ocean. Our first stop this week is at One Heart Island in Alexandria Bay, New York, where we tour a dream castle that has a heartbreaking story. George C. Boldt, an immigrant from Germany and the proprietor of the famous Waldorf Astoria Hotel in New York City, wanted to give his wife, named Louise, a present for her birthday and a Valentine's Day present. He decided on constructing a full-size castle on Hart Island. Long before he was a proprietor, George Boldt met Louise when he was 25 years old and working at the Philadelphia Club. George and Louise married 2 years later and had 2 children, named Charles, who was born in 1879, and Clover, who was born in 1883. At that point in time, they owned the hotel Little Bellevue. One night, when all their rooms were full, they met a man who was desperate to find a place to stay overnight with his children. George and Louise Boldt offered the man and his family their bedroom to stay. That man turned out to be the cousin of William Astor of the Waldorf Astoria Hotel in New York. After taking note of the Boldts' friendly hospitality, the man offered George to be a proprietor and the manager of the Waldorf Astoria Hotel. After becoming a wealthy man, George Boldt soon bought the 5-acre Hart Island from Congressman Elizur Hart and renamed the island from Hart, spelled H-A-R-T, to Hart, spelled H-E-A-R-T, Island. The heart theme and symbols was something George wanted to incorporate into the castle's design. The ambitious project began between 1900 and 1904. 300 workers, including stonemasons, carpenters, and artists, built the 6-story, 120-room castle. The castle had tunnels, a powerhouse, Italian gardens, a drawbridge, Ulster Tower, and a dovecote, which is a shelter with nest holes for pigeons. The Ulster Tower is also known as the Playhouse, and some of the rooms that you could have found in this tower included a 2-lane bowling alley, a shell room, and a theater. Boldt's castle was modeled after the masonry castles that you would have typically found in Germany, with its large plate glass windows and intricate stonework. This castle looked like it was straight out of a fairy tale. He also had the idea to hide heart symbols in the castle, in the stained glass and in the flower beds. However, in January 1904, Louise died. George Boldt sent a telegraph to the island and ordered the workers to stop working on the castle. He no longer wanted to finish the project without his wife. He supposedly left the island, leaving the castle unfinished and never returning. As time passed, the castle soon withered away from the rain, snow, wind, and vandalism it encountered. In 1977, the Thousand Islands Bridge Authority obtained the property and worked to preserve and restore the castle remains. Today, you can take a water taxi, a tour boat, or a private boat to tour the Boldt's castle. It's open for self-guided tours, and you can see several of the elaborate rooms, such as the ballroom and the library, to name a few. Besides the Boldt's castle, on the nearby Wesley Island is the Boldt's Yacht House, which showcases wooden boats and displays the 1892 steam yacht. About 4 hours or 243 miles away from the Boldt's castle is a museum that explores the history of the 26th President of the United States, Theodore Roosevelt. Theodore Roosevelt Inaugural National Historic Site is located at 641 Delaware Avenue in Buffalo, New York. The moment you step into the museum, you are transported to 1901, with exhibits that present the important figures during that time in history, such as President William McKinley and Annesley Wilcox, as well as the information about the Pan American Exposition that took place in Buffalo between May and November of 1901. The Pan American Exposition was a world fair that was hosted from May 1st to November 2nd. It drew in millions of visitors, and the purpose of the exposition was to celebrate the successes of the Western Hemisphere nations, while also strengthening the relationships between the North, South, and Central America. The museum also chronicles the life of Theodore Roosevelt, who was born in New York City in 1858, studied law at Harvard University, and entered politics in 1881. After being elected as a New York Assemblyman. In 1901, he became the 26th President of the United States, following the death of President William McKinley, who was shot at the Pan American Exposition and died of complications from his bullet wounds. Theodore Roosevelt served as president from 1901 to 1909. He was known for establishing the Food and Drug Administration after the release of the 1906 book, The Jungle, which exposed the unsafe and filthy conditions of the meatpacking industry at that time. He was also called the nation's first conservation president because of his commitment to preserve the nation's wilderness. Under his presidency, he established several national parks, forests, and monuments. Niagara Falls is the most famous waterfall in New York. It's comprised of 3 waterfalls: the Horseshoe Falls, also called the Canadian Falls, the American Falls, and the Bridal Veil Falls. Every second, 3,160 tons of water flows over Niagara Falls. In some sections of Niagara Falls, its vertical height is measured to be over 176 feet. But there is another waterfall in New York that can proudly boast being 33 feet taller than Niagara Falls. Located at 1740 Taughannock Boulevard in Ithaca, New York, or about 142 miles from the Theodore Roosevelt Inaugural Historic Site, is Taughannock Falls State Park. At 400 feet above the gorge, Taughannock Falls plunges past rocky cliffs at 215 feet. Taughannock Creek, which is part of the Cayuga Lake watershed, flows into Cayuga Lake. Thank you for listening to this week's episode. If you are curious and want to learn more about the Boldt Castle, check out the website boldtcastle.com, the article Boldt Castle, A Story of Love and Heartbreak at www.nytv.com, and the website milesgeek.com. If you want to learn more about the Theodore Roosevelt Inaugural National Historic Site, or even take a virtual tour of the museum, visit the website trsite.org. Lastly, if you want to learn more about the Taughannock Falls State Park, visit the website parks.ny.gov/parks/Taughannock Falls and the website taughannock.us, whereas additional information about Niagara Falls can be found on niagarafallsusa.com. Have a great week.